Stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. See if I can figure out who all's here, if we have a quorum. Let's see.
Would you like for me to call the roll?
Would you mind? That would be
Yes, sir. Councilmember Glover.
Here.
Councilmember Hervishon.
Present.
Councilmember Rodman.
Here.
Councilmember Howard.
here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Mark Lawson online.
Councilmember McKellen.
Here.
Councilmember Dawson.
Here.
Councilmember Flewelling. Councilmember Cunningham.
Present and online.
Chairman Somerville.
present.
And Councilmember Passman.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Brenna. Appreciate that. We've had public notification of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. Need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McKellen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Without objection, we will approve the agenda for today's executive committee meeting. Are there any objections? Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes for the August 15th, 2022 executive committee meeting. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of August 15, 2022.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a second?
A second.
The second. And so without objection, we will approve the minutes of the August 15th, 2022 executive committee meeting. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the minutes for the August 15th, 2022 meeting are approved. The next section is citizen comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the executive committee at this time?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we move on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is a discussion to ratify an amendment to the creation agreement for membership and representation to the Low Country Council of Government Board to increase Beaufort County's representation. Sabrina Graham, Executive Director of LOCOG, will make that presentation if she's present. My understanding is the purpose is because of the reapportionment done in 2020, that our population, Beaufort County population, increased relative to other counties in LOCOG, and we are entitled to additional representation. Is Ms. Graham present?
Yes,
She's coming.
forward.
Okay, Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to come and share with you this information and seek your approval thereof. Mr. Somerville, you summarized well the reason why we're here is because of the growth in population, primarily for Beaufort County. Per the 2020 census, that growth for Beaufort County was about 70%, which would warrant a substantial increase in the number of members on the COG board. And the executive committee for the COG board met and have prepared this proposal that has been approved by the full COG board and now has to be approved by the 4 member counties, Beaufort County being the second that I am visiting, seeking your approval. The previous full membership was 24 members. What's proposed is 29 members on the board. Beaufort County initially had 8 members, and based on the growth in population with each year, has come to 11 members. If we were to continue with the same proposal based on an increase in membership per 20,000 members in population, Beaufort County would have 14 members on the COG board, which would be very disproportionate to all of the other counties. So what is proposed for you today is that we cap the membership at the 11 that we currently have for Beaufort County. Hampton and Colleton County would remain at 6 members, and Jasper, who currently has 5, would go to 6. So we would have a total of 29 members. Again, 11 for Beaufort and 6 for Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties. The membership still includes for each county 1 minority representative and 1 at-large member. And also, if you have municipalities with populations of 1,501, 1,501 or greater, they are entitled to 1 member. So in Beaufort County, you have a representative from the city of Beaufort, Bluffton, Port Royal, and Hilton Head Island. That's a part of that 11 membership for Beaufort County. And I'm happy to go into greater detail. I believe you all had in your packets this information, or certainly I can take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Are there any questions by members of the council? Ms. Graham, before we move into a motion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I understand that there are 4 municipalities within Beaufort County that have representation out of the 11. Is that right?
Yes.
With the other members of the other counties, how many municipalities are members there?
It varies by county. For Colleton County, for example, the city of Walterboro has a member. The town of Edisto has an advisory member, and Yemassee, which sits in half of the 2 counties, has an advisory member. For Hampton, there are, I believe, 4 municipalities, that has a member on the board. And who am I leaving out? Jasper. They also, both of the municipalities there also have a member on the board.
So there are 4 members in Hampton, did you say?
Yes.
4 municipalities out of the 6.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the other 2, Hardyville is represented as part of Jasper, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then similarly, Yemassee is represented as part of Colleton.
Yemassee is an advisory member.
I mean Hampton.
Yes, but as an advisory member, they do not have a voting seat.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments by members of council before I ask for a motion?
Mr. Paul?
Councilman Rodman has his hand raised.
Yeah, I heard a voice. Okay, Stu, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand the problem of mushrooming population and how that affects the number of people. But it does seem to me that in all other realms, when that happens, you go back to awarding the seats based on the populations, not freezing them at some point in time. So, I know in the past we were about half of, maybe we were half of the population. Now we're obviously more than that. But we're really talking about being, whatever it is, a third of the representation. So it's not clear to me the logic of not biting the bullet and just distributing the seats based on population.
I'm not sure if I fully understand your question. It's based on population, but capped at a number that would be manageable and I think fair in representation of the 4 counties, but it is still based on population.
So what percentage of the population are we, do you think?
Percentage of the population or percentage of?
Well, the population of the 4 counties.
The total population of the 4 counties is 273,000, and almost 70% of that, 187, is in Beaufort County.
Okay. So we have whatever that percentage is, 70 or 80%, and we would have about 35 or 40% of the representation. So it's not clear to me why that's a good thing for Beaufort County.
I can certainly defer to the COG board members that are on the Beaufort County Council. I believe the effort was made, and there were several meetings in the discussion to make sure that everyone had good representation and worked again together as a region, and that the other counties also had representation.
Okay.
This has been approved by the COG board, which includes a lot of people from a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and to Ms. Graham's point, what Stu is getting at is that he feels like Beaufort County should dominate the membership of the board to a greater extent than what's being proposed. And our discussion at the COG board, the board of directors, we tried to formulate the board so that everybody has equal, well, it is not equal, but fair representation. So therefore, we came up with the 11 for Beaufort and 6 for the other 4 municipalities. And so that's what got us to where we are today.
Any other questions? Ms. Graham? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve, to ratify the amendment for the change in the membership of LOCOG.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we need to, any additional discussion? Do we need to have a roll call on this, or can we approve it without objection?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, all right, without objection, then we'll, does this need to go to full council? I think it does.
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Okay, so the motion would be to move it to council for final approval. So without objection, then we'll do exactly that. We'll approve it and to move forward to council. Thank you, Ms. Graham. Item number 8.
Thank you.
Which is recommend approval of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 3, Section 2-347 of the Beaufort County Code of Ordinances establishing entry-level salaries for certain elected officials, excluding members of County Council. Let me point out, this is, and Scott Marshall's going to talk to us a little bit about this. This is information only. We're not going to vote on anybody's salary today, but we are going to get a background of the context of what the current numbers look like for the similar counties throughout the state and what the current starting salaries are for entry-level folks in these positions. In other words, if somebody's been in that position, we're not talking about them at all. All we're talking about is when somebody comes in newly elected or newly appointed to one of these positions, whatever we decide ultimately, not today, whatever we decide ultimately would be their starting salary. So after we've had the presentations today and any questions that you all may have, then the next step, what I'm suggesting is that we come back and with recommendations, hopefully from staff, on what those numbers should look like. And of course, if any council member can weigh in at that time if they think it should be different from the staff recommendations. Marshall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and good afternoon, members of the Executive Committee. The chairman is correct. The title of that agenda item is a bit misleading. We're not asking you to approve an ordinance or are recommending approval of an ordinance at this time. This information is presented to you as information only at the request of some council members. And the information that was requested was to compare our elected officials' salary, the offices for whom you set entry-level pay per Beaufort County ordinance, to compare those entry-level salaries with counties that are in the Tier 1, as determined by the South Carolina Association of Counties. So that's what we've done. There are a few different sets of data in here. They can be confusing if you don't read the fine print on all of them, but I can boil this down pretty quickly. I have a handout that I provided to Brenna, and she has up on your screen now, that basically shows where our elected officials' offices' entry-level salaries are relative to the Tier 1 counties. And as you can see, let me pull mine out here. What's that? No, I've got them here. And if you all would like a paper handout that are here, I can give that to you
yes.
as well.
You didn't have that in the package, did you?
We did not, no, sir.
Okay.
No, sir, but it occurred to me that this was probably a better explanation than anything we had in the package.
Yeah.
So I'll just pass these out.
Thank you.
Council members that are with us via WebEx or Zoom or whatever we're doing these days, this is an email to them.
Oh, I got,
Sorry.
sorry.
Again, this is presented as information only for your consideration. As you can see, council chair and vice chair and council member, we are fairly healthy near the top of the heap when it comes to comparing ourselves to Tier 1 counties. As far as the other offices, we are pretty close to the bottom. And so this is presented for your information. Again, this is under your authority to determine what these entry-level salaries are per Beaufort County Ordinance. And so this is presented for your informational purposes and to give you some reference and to inform you of the issue should you decide to give further direction to staff for further study or to recommend a change to the ordinance to bring back to you, et cetera. So I'm available to answer any questions you might have at this time or help with the discussion.
Lots of hands up. Larry McKellen, I saw yours. I saw your first, and then Logan, I'll get you second.
When you are looking at, hi, Scott. When you're looking at council chair, vice chair, and council member, and you have those salaries set up, I see the other salaries in comparison by looking at each county and the other material you provided. And you'll recall that a couple of years ago, we eliminated, we had a salary that hadn't been adjusted for about a decade. And then we also had a stipend that was added to the salary. But that stipend was eliminated, and now we only have a salary. When you gathered the information on the salaries of all the other councils, did you include the stipends they receive or just report the salaries they reported?
We recorded salaries, and we obtained that information from the South Carolina Election Commission based on the salary information that was provided to determine the filing fees for those offices. We find that information to be far more accurate than the Association of Counties salary survey.
Yeah. So then the answer may be no. You only receive the information on their salaries, not their salaries plus stipends.
That's correct.
So that this may not be accurate.
I thought it is.
Well, I believe it is accurate.
It's accurate because it claims their salary. I'm asking if you've combined their salaries and stipends to come up with a total.
To my knowledge, no, we have not, unless the information they provided the Election Commission was a combined, which reasonably should have been, because when the Election Commission is determining filing fees, they are considering overall compensation.
Sure. Okay. Right. Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Larry, I take your point, but we're not, the purpose of this particular exercise is not to address the salaries of the county of us. It's only to address the other.
No, I get that. I just was wondering if it was accurate, that's all.
Okay, good. But it is a good question. Logan, you had a question, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And mine might be silly, I might be misinformed, but aren't we classified as tier 2 or right on the edge?
That is a great question, Mr. Cunningham. I'm so glad you asked it. We are squarely in Tier 2. We are not a Tier 1 county, never have been, and likely never will be.
How is that defined?
Right now, Tier 1 is defined as a population of 200,000 or greater. And we're at about 187,000. Yes, sir.
It's always seemed to me two things. One, if all of the homes that are platted bluff to build out, we're going to double our population, so we probably will. But there's a thing called service population, and we have a very high service population compared to a lot of other ones. 2.5 million people a year, whatever that equates to. So I've always viewed us that we really should compare ourselves to tier 1s.
Right. Well, while that may be true, and I would not argue that point because I don't find anything you say to be not factual right now, the fact of the matter remains that tier rating is based solely upon your population.
I understand.
And the counties are grouped accordingly for a reason. There's a reason they're in 4 different groups or 5 different groups, however many we grouped them. And as soon as we hit the 200,000 mark in 10 more years with the census, my money is on the fact that line for Tier 1 county is going to move.
Sure.
And so we likely will always be grouped with Tier 2 counties.
Yeah, let me just make a quick comment there. We have debated this topic at council numerous times, and the argument goes something like this: that while we are, if you only look at bed population, we are a Tier 2 county. But as the sheriff often says, we're for service population, which Mr. Rodman mentioned, that we're 250,000. and maybe even more at certain times. And so the question becomes, what's really reflective of the needs of this county? Is it as a service population or is it actual population? I mean, we're not going to solve that issue today. I'm just simply saying that that's the discussion we've had numerous times. And what we've done is we've erred on the side of service population. So you can draw your own conclusions. Yes, sir. Logan, go ahead.
I'm fine with, us taking the numbers on tier one. I've talked to you guys before in debates about where I think we should be for pay for everyone across the county. To be honest, I don't really care what other people are paying in other counties. I just think we should be fairly compensating our area. We know what our cost of living is and the areas we need to improve on. It really makes no difference to me what Charleston or Greenville or Columbia, any of them do. I just want to make sure that we're comparable to be able to get the best talent, because us 11 have one job, and that's to get the best talent here in Beaufort County for our residents. And I don't know who these high numbers are. I wish maybe on the blue numbers for the high, if we could have figured out where those areas are. But if we're going to compete, we got to put a better product out there. If we want to keep the best talent and our homegrown talent, we have to make sure they're compensated. And it's pretty clear based on these numbers, we are pretty low. Tier one, tier two, call it whatever you want. But there is a little bit of a disconnect there.
This would be that's a good question, Mr. Cunningham. I appreciate your comments. I think this is a good time for any of us who has some concerns to let staff know what types of questions or concerns we're going to have when it comes forward with an actual recommendation in each one of these categories, each one of these elected officials. And what you suggested is very interesting because it makes a lot of sense. So think about that before we move on from this item. If there's something that specific that you'd like to see or hear from staff when they come forward with fill in the blanks, we think that the clerk of court should make X number of dollars in Beaufort County. So if you have any additional comments or questions, now would be a good time to raise them so we can prepare staff to put this together for them.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I remember going over this recently, and I don't believe that what I'm seeing is accurate. I'll tell you why. There were raises given back in 2020, and I think the sheriff and the clerk and the treasurer are the green numbers what we think people are making here?
No.
Here's what I think is going on here.
Well, can I ask Scott, are the green numbers what we think people are making?
Yeah, let me just be clear about one thing, and that might help free up a lot of confusion. We are not talking about salaries of anyone who is currently in an elected position. We are talking about entry-level salaries for those positions for someone who is newly elected. Those are two entirely different things. So if we have given raises to individuals that are in an elective office, that is not applicable to this particular topic of conversation right now. Mr. Cunningham, I heard you mention, I don't...
Follow up just for a moment before you jump back to Mr. Cunningham?
Sure, go ahead.
That $183,000 is a starting salary for the sheriff in a county somewhere?
Yes.
That's the starting salary.
Yes.
And the other $203,000 for a judge is the starting salary.
Yes. If you look at page 15 of your packet, that's what I was getting to answer Mr. Cunningham's concern. Page 15 of your packet has the backup information for those figures, and it shows each county and what that office's entry-level salary is.
Isn't the probate judge controlled by state statute?
I'm sorry? Say that again?
Probate judge's salary, is that not controlled by state statute?
The probate judge's salary, I believe, is set in your ordinance. There are additional stipends that the state provides, but...
That wasn't my question. My question is, isn't the probate judge's salary set by state statute?
And let me take a look quickly at your ordinance in the packet. The probate judge's salary is set by county council, the entry-level salary. There are stipends that are provided by the state, but county council sets the entry-level salary for that position.
So that Master in Equity the magistrates, the circuit court judges, the appeals court, and the Supreme Court are all set by state statute, but the probate judge is set by Beaufort County. Is that right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
I think what's confusing is we have dealt over the years with the salaries of existing elected officials, and this has nothing to do with them. This is just if somebody is elected for the first time or appointed for the first time, what their salary would be.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, let me make sure I understand. I appreciate the final sheet you sent out.
Yes, sir.
So I know that where we have Beaufort County Sheriff, I'm gonna use the sheriff for the,
Okay.
that the base salary for the sheriff is 112. That's the starting salary going forward. If I became sheriff today, that's where my salary will be. The current sheriff is making more than that, and I see that. Yes, 183 for Richland. That's the base salary.
Yes,
so
sir.
the sheriff in Richland County may be making more than 183. Is that? I just want to make sure I understand.
You're reading that correctly, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, Mr. Robbins.
One other question. When we increase the starting salary for individuals, does that trigger an adjustment up the line based on years of service, or is that totally independent of?
That when you establish a new base salary in your ordinance, that's independent.
Independent, so it doesn't automatically trigger?
No.
Okay, based on?
Unless you want to write the ordinance in that
sure.
fashion. Currently, the ordinance is not written that way.
Okay.
You have that prerogative to do that if you want.
Any other questions or any more information I can provide? Again, this is presented to you for information. Staff is glad to take your direction to provide additional information or additional study or to come back with a revised ordinance as you please. Yes, sir.
Maybe a question for Eric, or both of you. In terms of putting together a recommendation, given that it's elected officials, is that something that staff needs to do, or is that better done by a small group of council members? Since we're dealing.
Well, it's going to have to be a hybrid of some sort, and we can do it any number of ways. I mean, if we start with staff, but then when it comes back to us, we're going to have council members who are going to have an opinion on it. So, what do you suggest before that happens?
I was just wondering whether. I was just wondering, we don't want to put Eric in an uncomfortable position of making recommendations about elected officials. Maybe they're okay with that, but I'm just raising that as whether that's a concern.
Yeah, we wanted you all to be aware of the situation. You have one new elected, at least the probate judge, two new elected positions coming in, the auditor and probate judge that will be coming in. We wanted you all to know where they would come in at versus what the market is doing in other jurisdictions, so you ought to have the information. And we don't have a position on either way. I think it's something that the council needs to decide what you want to do with.
Yeah, so Paul, it seems to me at the end of the day, Paul, there's something we need to decide how we want to come up with a recommendation.
Are you suggesting, and I think it's a good idea, to have a subcommittee, if you will, of this council to work with staff to come up with some numbers?
I'll leave that to you and Joe.
But are you volunteering?
I'm always happy to do anything more.
The only thing we would request is that, we do this before January.
Sure, so we have to do it that way.
Yes, and I think it's going to change the ordinance is going to take 3 readings, so time's short.
How many people present within the sound of my voice would be willing to serve on a subcommittee to do that? Not everybody at once. Come on now.
I would.
Who said that?
That's Chris Herbichan.
Chris? Okay. Who else?
I think Councilman Rodman raised his hand.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Rodman, are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Are you still putting your name out there?
Yeah, I thought I'd already said okay.
Okay, so we got 2 so far. We 2 would work. 3 would probably be a little bit better. So, is there a third person that's willing to do it?
What's the committee going to do, Paul?
They're going to work with staff to come up with specific recommendations for starting salaries for these 7 or 8 elected official positions.
You only need 2 though, right, at the
But
moment?
we only need 2. I'm seeing 3 might be a little bit better.
I don't mean that. There's only 2 people that are starting. So you need to do 7? Is that what you're saying?
Might
No,
as
no,
well.
no. I'm just composing a subcommittee, and so far I have 2 volunteers, and I'm suggesting that a 3rd volunteer would be nice.
Okay, let me ask the question a different way. How many starting salaries will you be working on?
I don't know, count them up. We just looked at the list.
2.
No, we look at all of them.
2 new employees.
There are 7 in the ordinance.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, got it.
Well, before you leave there, are you volunteering to be on this committee?
Sounds a little too confusing for me. I'll have to abstain from that committee. Thank you.
All right. No other hands going up?
Sounds
Looks like Mr. Herbishon and Mr. Rodman just,
I'll
I volunteer for that. I'm gonna ruffle a couple feathers.
Alice said she'd do it.
I do it. Make the
Alice will, so I just, there's a 3rd person. Okay, yeah, well, all right, but I'm gonna use my quote unquote authority here as the chairman of the executive committee to appoint a subcommittee of the executive committee to work with staff, i.e. Mr. Marshall and anyone else on staff who wishes to participate, to come up with some suggestions to bring before us. Let's see, it's now what, October 10th? How about November? By November, is that reasonable?
You need 3 readings?
We'll get 3 readings for January. That's fine, and we'll do it whenever we do it, and make it retroactive. And we don't need to worry about one of the positions, because that doesn't happen until June. The auditor takes office in June, so it'll only potentially affect the probate judge salary. And we can, if we're a month behind, then we can make it retroactive, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear those comments. It sounded something like, it's not a big deal if we don't get it by January 1st.
It's not a big deal. It only affects one elected official. So if we finish the new base salaries in January, then that would affect the potential salary of the incoming probate judge, because the auditor does not take office until June of 23. So we can get this done. And if it's done after the probate judge takes her office or takes office, then we can make it retroactive to January 1.
It works for me. So take your time, bring forth the recommendation on November the 10th, or whatever the executive committee meeting is in November. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Marshall? Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Before you go, you mentioned 7 office.
Well,
That's including
there's
council?
6 that county council sets salaries for, and one that's listed is set by state statute.
Gotcha. Okay.
That would be master in equity. You're welcome, Mr. Chairman. by the way.
Chairman Somerville, can you ask for a motion to establish the subcommittee and bring back a recommendation in November?
I certainly can. I have a motion to establish a subcommittee consisting of Mr. Herbishon, Mr. Rodman, and Ms. Howard to work with staff, specifically Mr. Marshall, to come back with specific recommendations for these, or 6 or is it 6 or 7, Scott?
6.
Elected
I will make that
officials
motion.
at our November executive committee meeting. Logan, did you make the motion?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Without objection, we can approve that motion. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion to create the subcommittee is approved, and we look forward to the report on our November executive committee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Next item is item number 9, recommend approval of a resolution to approve ARPA-funded sign-on bonus policy fiscal impact, $500,000 from ARPA funds appropriated under Ordinance 222. Does that need to be presented? And if so, by whom?
I'm available to do that, Mr. Chairman. If you like, I can run through the particulars of the program, or if council wants to go ahead and take a vote on it, it's your call. I'm here for you.
Please.
So Ordinance 2022-16 was passed third and final reading on March 28th, and part of that ordinance specified the use of ARPA funds and designated $500,000 toward recruitment incentives for public safety positions. What staff is asking is your consideration of the resolution in your packet. Exhibit A of that resolution is a human resources policy document which defines a program that provides incentives using the $500,000 in ARPA funds. The program will provide a sign-on bonus of $5,000 for new employees in EMS, the detention center, and the sheriff's office. Please note that the narrative on page 18 of your packet specifies a total of $2,500 for a sign-on bonus, and that is incorrect. It is a $5,000 sign-on bonus specified in the policy. This policy would also provide a relocation assistance stipend of $2,500 for employees who are relocating to Beaufort County from outside a 30-mile radius. The program components are the employee must remain employed with Beaufort County at least 1 year. There are provisions that prevent double dipping, meaning an employee can only receive this bonus and this relocation stipend one time during the whole life of the program. Current employees who separate after the effective date of this program are not eligible for a sign-on bonus earlier than 1 year following their separation of employment. Now, that's to keep, if I'm an employee in EMS and I hear we have this program, oh, I'm going to quit and I'm going to come back in 6 weeks, I'm going to get my $5,000. This is to prevent that. The program will be implemented the first day of the first month following council's approval of the resolution. And the program will terminate when we've expended all of the $500,000 in ARPA funds or December 31st, 2024, whichever comes first. I fully anticipate we will go through the funds way before December 31st, 2024. I'm available for any questions you might have on this program the way it's written. Yes, Mr.
So we can have a motion and a second before we get into discussion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second the
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We're now in discussion. Questions for Mr. Marshall or anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I just got one quick question. A radius of 30 miles
Yes,
from headquarters here.
yes.
If I look at north, would that put me, oh, you got a map?
Picture's worth 1,000.
That's what I thought. Okay. I'm fine, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Anybody else? Any other questions for Mr. Marshall?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe in here and I missed it. Okay. I come here and get on with the detention, as a detention center.
Yes,
Then I go
ma'am.
work for the sheriff.
No, you don't work, what's that?
I work for the detention center and then 6 months later I go work for the sheriff.
You're still in the employ of the county.
What if I go work for the City of Beaufort Police Department?
Well, then you're going to owe us money if
Okay.
you leave before your year's up.
Okay,
There's a clawback provision in the program as
that's
well.
the callback. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Paul, when we
Yes, sir.
approve this, let's just say it becomes effective July 1st. And people are being hired all the time. If someone was hired on June 30th, they don't qualify?
Currently, the way it's written, no. I mean, if we want to write a grace period in there, I'm sure we can do that. But the point is, we've got to draw a line somewhere at some point.
Yeah, I know. Okay, and 30 miles for reimbursement of moving costs. More than 30 miles. That seems reasonable. Okay.
Right. Just to clarify, it's not reimbursement of moving costs. It's a single payment stipend of $2,500.
Oh, no submission of receipts?
No, but you do have to provide proof of residency.
So if they move here from 40 miles away and they hire a U-Haul truck and it costs them $500, we're going to give them $2,500?
According to the way it's written now, yes, sir.
I see. Okay.
Anybody else for Mr. Marshall?
If I might, Paul?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, to piggyback off of Larry's concern, I was contemplating the same thing. We have a clawback only requiring them to, after they get the signing bonuses, only requiring them to stay a year. If they leave before the year, then the clawback goes into effect. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But the way it's written, if they stay that 1 year, they get all the bonuses that we're offering, and then after that 1 year, they can leave.
Yes.
To me, that doesn't make sense at all.
And again, this is a draft policy. We can make whatever revisions that you would like to make you feel comfortable before we bring it to the full council for adoption.
All right.
All right,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Yeah. We're going to have a cutoff on everything. For example, if you don't like the year, what do you like, a year and a half, or maybe it's too long, too short? You can make that as a motion to amend at some point along the way. But I do. We have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution as it's currently written. So I'm going to call a question on that unless somebody wants to make an amendment.
This going to require 3 reading, or is it?
Single reading. It's a resolution.
Let's have a roll call.
There you go. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
One reading of full council.
Yeah. You are just making a recommendation.
Right.
And if you all have feedback for us, we'll be glad to make changes in the recommendations, and you all can move it on to council. So if you prefer 2 years for the clawback, then I think that's consistent with what other jurisdictions do, and whatever changes you all want to make.
Yeah. To me, that's the whole value of bringing it to committee first, so we can fine tune
That
it.
motion to make that program be 2 years.
From 1 year to 2 years?
Yes, sir. Before we send it to council to discuss more, but I'd like to send it that way to council ahead of time.
Let me make sure
I think our job is to keep people in the county, not just get them here. And if we want to keep them here, we got to put out the best product possible. And 2 years is a time for us to, show them exactly what Beaufort County is about and fixing that entire environment.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that motion to amend?
I'll second that.
Okay, have a second. All right, let's vote on the motion to amend.
May I ask, I'd like to suggest a change. I think that the relocation bonus is good, but I think that people who receive it should submit receipts for payment up to a maximum of $2,500, rather than just a blanket grant of $2,500 to move.
Well, the purpose of it is to attract people, not to require them to get into it with the Internal Revenue Service. I mean, you can do that, Larry, but I think it's going to defeat the purpose of it.
Well, we should just give everybody a relocation benefit then.
We are essentially.
We're comfortable with tracking the receipts if that will make the program last longer.
Larry, would you be willing to split it? Isn't it 5,000 total? What if we did 2,500 on receipts and the other 2,500 as a bonus?
All I'm asking people to do is they move, give us receipts for the move.
Yeah, so
It's a traditional government exercise. You get reimbursed for what your expenditures were. I don't care about the bonus. All I'm saying is you can't just come in and say, I want $2,500 to move. It's not costing me anything. You can't do that.
Right.
I mean, you
Happens
could
all
do
the
that.
time. A lot of companies.
No, you could do that, but I would never approve that.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so you don't want to have a bonus, which is what it is essentially. I mean, it could be actual expenses, but it doesn't have to be. So you want to change it to what? Expenses only?
No, I don't care about the bonus. I'm talking about the move, $2,500 move. That's all I'm talking about.
Right, and I'm saying, so you want it to be expenses only, not a bonus.
Actual expenses for the move. That's right.
Okay, well, right now we have an amendment on the floor to increase the time period to retain it from 1 year to 2 years.
Okay.
Let's knock that one out, and then we'll come back to yours. All right. Yes, sir. Chris?
If I might, yeah. In normal times, I would 100% agree with Mr. McKellen on this. I'd be all for the receipts and all of that. However, in a period where remote work is becoming more the norm than not, and if we're trying to attract people to actually come to the county, I would be in favor of just doing the flat $2,500.
Thank you, Chris. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Where we are right now is 1 year versus 2 years. Can I call the question on that one? We'll call the question on the amendment. I think it was Logan's amendment initially. Is that correct, Logan?
Paul, before you call the question,
Yeah.
if I might,
Sure.
I'm wrestling with this because here we are, we're trying to establish an ordinance to recruit and retain. We're actually dealing with the issue of retention as well as recruitment. And for us to give or initiate the sign-in bonuses that we're contemplating and only limit them to a 2-year commitment, I have a problem with that. I think it should be more than a 2-year. What's the purpose of us giving the sign-in bonus, only asking them to stay 1 year or 2 year, and then after 2 year, I can move on to something else? All that sign-in bonus is just going to waste.
Well, you can.
You didn't really retain, or you didn't really accomplish the purpose for which you were given the bonuses.
Right, and if you don't like that, vote against it, and if it goes down, then you can make an amendment to make it 3 years or 5 years or whatever you think it should be.
That I will.
Okay, so I want to call the question on 2 versus 1.
Now, Mr. Chairman, before you vote, I'm ready to vote, but I want to make sure. We're saying that the second 2,500 would come the second year, or they receive that the first year, but they have to stay for 2 years. Is that the motion that's on the floor?
No, not as I understand it. As I understand it, the motion is on the floor is just with regard to the amount of time that you have to stay in the employ of the county before you have to pay back any of your bonus. Right now, the way that the policy is drafted is that you would get $2,500 upon hire, and then the remaining $2,500 of your sign-on bonus at the completion of your probationary period of employment.
Gotcha.
And that'll be the same, but you will have to stay 2 years or you have to pay it back.
All right, so again, I want to call the question, but everybody's clear. If you don't like the 2 years, Mr. Dawson suggested he doesn't like the 2 years. If you don't like the 2 years, then vote against this. And if it fails, then we can come back and have another motion for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years or whatever this body likes. Let me call the question.
Mr. Chairman, before I vote, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This might be for Eric. How often do we hire within the county to move employees to a different section?
We have employees that move around, but this would not apply to existing county employees. This is, again, the purpose of this program.
Right. Well, my question is, I'll save you because I know exactly what I'm going to say. What my question is, though, if we're about retention and retaining, 2 years is just for their bonus, that they have to stay in that specific position. But that doesn't mean they can't transfer to another department after those 2 years, and that's still a form of retention for us in Beaufort County.
That's correct.
I believe if they transfer to another department that is not one of the original departments that was eligible for the bonus, the spirit of the program, I believe, would require them to pay back that money. In other words,
I agree with
if they come to the sheriff's office and sign on as a deputy and they want to move to voter registration, then they're not really eligible for that public safety sign-on bonus anymore.
Completely understand that. Mine is more just logic of retention itself. Money outside of it, payback program outside of it, just retention for Beaufort County is the ultimate goal of this program.
Yes.
All right, so if they move around in the county, then they don't have to pay it back.
If they move around between the offices that are specified in the policy, which is EMS, Detention Center, and Sheriff's Office. Because again, the intent of this is to create a policy that fulfills your ordinance that you already approved that sets aside $500,000 to get our public safety functions healthy, manning-wise.
Okay.
Thank
Do I
you.
need to call a roll on this, 2 versus 1?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Okay, I ask the clerk to call a roll on this, please.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Yes.
Councilmember McEllen.
No.
Councilmember Glover.
Yes.
Councilmember Hervashon.
Yes.
Councilmember Rodman.
No.
Councilmember Howard.
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson.
He's here.
Oh, you're good.
Mark Lawson, no.
Councilmember Dawson.
No.
I have 4. Oh, Councilmember Somerville. Sorry.
Yes.
So I have 5-4.
Okay, so it goes from 1 to 2. Now, what was the other amendment that somebody suggested they wanted to make, or did I miss something? Before we move back to the main motion.
Larry, that was yours.
Yeah, that was the receipts on the $2,500 reimbursement on the moving expenses. But we have to have a motion to that effect in a second before we can act on it.
I'll make the motion that receipts should be provided for the relocation bonus to a maximum of $2,500.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to require receipts for receipt of up to $2,500, and that leaves, as I understand it, $2,500 that they receive with no conditions on it.
No. It's a $5,000 sign-on bonus and a $2,500 relocation bonus.
Right.
The $2,500 relocation bonus, as I understand, has nothing to do with the $5,000 sign-on.
Correct.
Okay, so
my motion
$7,500 total.
to require
that was confused.
sign
All
on
right, thank you.
for the relocation up to $2,500.
Okay, all right, fine. So we have a motion to require receipts for up to the $2,500 relocation reimbursement and leaving the $5,000 retention fee as it stands.
Right.
That sound right, Mr. Allen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Any comments or questions about that motion to amend? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Do we need a roll call on this one?
I think you do.
Who said that?
Eric?
Eric? You're not voting. Does anybody who's voting want us to have a roll call?
I do.
Paul?
You do?
Paul?
Yeah.
Paul,
I'm listening.
are we considering the clawback in this motion?
There will be no clawback in this because when they're going to incur the expense of moving
Oh, okay.
regardless.
And the motion is to require receipts.
Motion is to require receipts for reimbursement up to $2,500. And the only reason I said that you probably need to do a roll call is because of Councilmember Hervishon expressing that he would vote against the motion.
Well, let me make sure that we're clear on one thing. You don't need a clawback if you require receipts. You turn in the receipt, you get the reimbursement. There's no need for a clawback. We're not going to give them $2,500 and then say, oh, by the way, you didn't give us receipts. You owe us $1,400, whatever the difference turns out to be. So,
Yes, sir.
Somebody know something I don't know here?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's no confusion about that.
Motion to amend to require receipts for the up to $2,500 in reimbursement for moving expenses.
That's right. For people who live more than 30 miles away.
Right. So I'm going to say this is approved without objection unless there's an objection.
I got a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
A separate vote, if you would. Actually, when you go and move, you've got a lot of other expenses and things that hit you that you may not necessarily have receipts for. And anybody who's going to relocate is probably going to hit close to this number anyway. So to me, I don't think it's worth going through the hassle of getting the receipts. I think it's better off just to pay them and be done with it once they prove their residency.
If I could, there is an administrative cost attached to tracking the expenses up to and including the $2,500. There are many expenses that an employee may incur that aren't evident right away, but they might know, hey, I haven't used all my $2,500. I still have a storage space in Statesville, Georgia. So I'd like to claim my storage space. And so we'd have to be really clear with how we allow them to reimburse and what the time limit is on submitting all reimbursements. And I would maintain that given the relatively small amount, $2,500 per employee to relocate here, the administrative cost on the other side of that may not make it worth it. That's just my 2 cents worth. I'll be quiet now because I wasn't asked for that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a comment too.
Yeah, please.
I agree with Councilman Rodman because you move, you've got expenses. such as deposits for your electric, deposits for this, deposits for that, they're not going to get reimbursed. You're just going to have to eat it, or pay it, I guess. And I agree. I think this is kind of the minimum amount, and to require the receipts is kind of extreme.
Thank you, Alice. I happen to share that view. That's why we're going to call the roll on this one. And if you honestly think that they should provide receipts, then you vote yes. If you think they shouldn't, vote no, and we'll see where it goes. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Councilmember McEllen.
Yes?
Councilmember Cunningham.
Yes.
Councilmember Glover.
No.
Councilmember Hervashon. I can come back to him. Councilmember Rodman.
No.
Councilmember Howard.
No.
Councilmember Lawson.
Mark Lawson, no.
Councilmember Dawson.
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
No.
Councilmember Hervashon. Without his vote, it's 5-3. It fails.
So we couldn't change the outcome anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, let's move back to them. Thank you very much. Are there any other amendments? I'm not aware of any, so we can move on to the main motion of item number 9. As amended, I'm sorry, as amended with the 2 years versus the 1 year. Okay, without any additional amendments, I'm going to call the question on the main motion, item number 9, which is to recommend a resolution to approve ARPA-funded sign-on bonus as amended. Do we need to call a roll on that one?
Can I amend the amendment?
You make another amendment.
I heard. I don't get nuance and subtlety with electronic participation.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, you said, can you amend it?
Yeah, can I amend the amendment?
The amendment already passed. So we have right now, we have a main motion.
Make another amendment.
Yeah, you can offer another amendment.
All right.
You can offer another amendment, yeah, sure.
I move to amend the motion that the clawback clause require a 5-year stay before they have to reimburse the county.
5 years. Okay, so we go, your motion, or sorry, your amendment is to go from 2 years to 5 years for clawback, right?
Right.
'Cause we're currently at 2. Okay, fine. Anybody want to comment on that, and go ahead and let me go ahead and call a question on it. Everybody understands it. I mean, we've been talking about it for a long time. All right. Can I do this without objection, or?
There hasn't been a second for the motion.
Oh, point.
I have a second.
Is there a second? Tick, 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 tick. All right, the amendment dies for lack of a second. Now we're back to the main motion, which is to recommend approval of a resolution to approve ARPA-funded sign-on bonus as amended from 1 year to 2 years. And it's a motion, it's been motioned and seconded. Ask the clerk to please call, do I need to call a roll on this one?
Yes.
Okay, clerk, please call a roll on this.
Yes, sir. Councilman Rodman.
Yes.
Councilmember Howard.
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson.
Mark Lawson, yes.
Councilmember McEllen.
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson.
No.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Yes.
Councilmember Hervashon. Councilmember Glover.
Yes.
Councilman Somerville.
Yes.
It's 7-1 without Councilman Hervashon.
That takes care of item number 9. Item number 10 is recommend approval of the appointment of Darwin Cleveland, owner of Advanced Fiber Optic Technology, as the business representative for Beaufort County on the Low Country Council of Governments for a 3-year term expiring 2025.
All three of them together.
The motion? What?
Chairman, we'd like to do all 3 of them together appointments.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about 12, 10, 11, and 12?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, let me rephrase that. I'd like a motion to approve item 10, which is Darwin Cleveland, item 11, which is appointment of Colonel Quandra Grant, also to LOCOG. And the third one is Steve Phobes to the Economic Development Corporation. Could I have a motion on that, please?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay. Can I approve that without exception?
Just one question on Steve Phobes.
Yep.
Do I remember correctly that he's the town of Hilton Head's appointment to the Economic Development Corporation as opposed to ours?
I think that's right. I think we have to approve it, though.
Yeah, we have to prove it. I think that's what it is. I
Oh,
think
the
it's
slot.
town.
That's the slot.
Yeah, so we need to verify with the town that they're nominating him, I guess.
I'm assuming that the clerk,
County administration doesn't have anything to do with those. That's the clerk, the council's office. So we'll verify that prior to the council meeting.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Subject to that verification, that's a good point, Stu. I mean, I assume that the town of Hilton Head appointed him, reappointed him, but you're right, we can confirm that. So I have a motion to reappoint or appoint all three of these folks. It's been seconded. Can I approve that without objection, subject to the confirmation of Steve Phobes? Is that a yes? Anybody
Yes.
want to?
Anyone?
Okay. Those three are approved without exception, subject to the confirmation of Steve Phobes' reappointment by the town of Hilton Head. And that concludes all matters on our agenda. We are,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
before you close, we just reappointed Steve Phobes to the Beaufort County Economic Development Board.
Yes, sir.
Where are we with the reappointment of, I believe it was Mike Asklo for the South Carolina Alliance Board?
I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to figure that out and get to you as quick as we can.
All right, would you put it on the next agenda for the executive
I
committee?
think we can get you an answer before the next agenda.
All right, if we hadn't done that reappointment, then would you put it on the agenda for the next executive board?
Well, wait a minute. If it hasn't been done, he gets appointed by us, right?
Right.
Okay. So you can make that motion.
And I'm asking you to put it on your next executive committee agenda if it hadn't been done already.
I don't know how to answer that, Bill, because I think somebody has to make the motion to do that.
Well, we need to check with the SCA to make sure that, if you recall, several months ago, there was an attendance issue as reported by the SCA, Southern Carolina Alliance. So let us verify that with clerk and counsel's office if that issue has been corrected, so that we'll make sure, I'll work with the clerk and counsel's office to make sure it gets added to the executive committee meeting or an appropriate committee in November to be taken care of.
All right, good enough.
All right, all matters having been brought before this body, we are dismissed. Adjourned.